Welcome to the Queen Liz channel and the long wait over, the New York Knicks' historic 2026 NBA championship journey. After an agonizing 53-year drought, the team finally reached the basketball pinnacle of the NBA on June 20th, 2026. Today we are unpacking exactly how this modern roster built for greatness that proved the naysayers wrong and rewrote history. Before we dive into the legendary basketball season, and if you love the Knicks like Queen Liz does, watch this video to the end and take 1 second to hit that like button, drop a comment below, and share this video. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it powerfully triggers the algorithm to push our content globally and directly supports the growth of the Queen Liz community. Get ready for this epic record-breaking playoff gauntlet and finals blueprint. Turn your notifications on so you never miss what is next from Queen Liz. And now, the long wait over, the historic New York Knicks 2026 championship journey. After 53 years, the Knicks broke the curse with a 53-win season. Under coach Mike Brown, they forged a modern powerhouse, even capturing the NBA Cup in Las Vegas. The blueprint for this historic championship season was set into motion following a highly debated leadership pivot. Looking to unlock the full potential of their star-studded roster, the front office made the bold decision to dismiss Tom Thibodeau and hand the reins to veteran tactician Mike Brown on a 4-year, $40 million contract. Though some skeptics initially questioned if Brown was the definitive answer to push the team past its previous postseason ceiling, his signature defensive discipline and willingness to expand rotational depth immediately transformed the team's culture. The early dividends of Brown's system manifested during the inaugural in-season tournament. Showcasing an explosive offense paired with an unyielding perimeter defense, the Knicks tore through the bracket to reach the desert. In Las Vegas, they secured the inaugural NBA Cup, a high-profile triumph that established New York as an immediate, verified championship favorite. However, the euphoria of the Las Vegas victory was quickly met by a harsh mid-season reality check. The intense physical toll of the winter schedule triggered a devastating injury slump through January and February. With key components of the starting lineup sidelined, the roster's depth was tested to its absolute limits, resulting in a temporary slide down the conference standings and exposing vulnerabilities in the team's consistency. Rather than letting the season derail, Mike Brown utilized these regular season pitfalls as a tactical laboratory. He trusted his bench players to play high-volume minutes, a strategic pivot that cultivated vital depth and critical chemistry. By the time the medical staff cleared the core roster for the postseason, the Knicks emerged not as a fragile favorite, but as a battle-tested, resilient machine uniquely equipped to navigate the playoff gauntlet and ultimately capture the Larry O'Brien Trophy. However, the season had its challenges. A mid-season 2-9 slump and a defensive collapse tested the team. Injuries to key players like Brunson and Anunoby fueled concerns about their title aspirations. The devastating winter stretch threatened to completely derail the franchise's championship ambitions. The elite defensive matrix that defined their early season success disintegrated when a sudden cascade of soft tissue and impact injuries gutted the starting lineup. The most critical blow came when OG Anunoby was sidelined with a severe hamstring strain, instantly stripping the defense of its premier perimeter stopper and versatile switch anchor. Without Anunoby to lock down opposing star wings, the team's defensive rating plummeted to the bottom tier of the league, surrendering high-efficiency scoring nights to inferior opponents. The pressure on the remaining roster intensified exponentially, leading to a brutal 2-9 slump over a 3-week period that saw the team slide dangerously down the Eastern Conference standings. The crisis peaked when the relentless physical burden caught up to Jalen Brunson, forcing his way through heavy defensive trapping schemes without his usual supporting cast. The fearless floor general suffered a painful ankle sprain that sidelined him for multiple games. With both their offensive engine and defensive anchor watching from the bench, national media outlets openly written off New York's title aspirations, labeling the roster too fragile to survive a grueling 7-game playoff series. Yet, this dark period ultimately served as the ultimate crucible for head coach Mike Brown's squad. Forced into a corner, management aggressively navigated the buyout market to secure immediate veteran depth, while bench players were thrust into high-leverage situations. This forced adaptation cultivated a resilient, next-man-up mentality. By weathering this absolute worst-case scenario and fixing their defensive schemes under extreme duress, the team forged the mental armor required to execute historic postseason comebacks once their superstars finally returned to full health. The team relied on star power: Jalen Brunson, the clutch engine, and Karl-Anthony, the spacing titan. Both players elevated their game when it mattered most. This dynamic superstar duo formed a perfectly complementary offensive engine that opposing coaching staffs found mathematically impossible to solve. At the point of attack, Jalen Brunson operated with surgical precision, solidifying his reputation as the NBA's most cold-blooded late-game executioner. When postseason defenses tightened and structural plays broke down under intense pressure, Brunson took complete control. Utilizing mesmerizing footwork, a lethal mid-range pull-up, and an unshakable poise, he consistently generated high-efficiency baskets in isolation, culminating in his historic, career-defining 45-point masterpiece to close out the finals. Complementing this perimeter brilliance was the unique, gravity-altering presence of Karl-Anthony Towns. Known as the Titan, or KAT, Towns completely revolutionized the court's geometry for the offense. As a 7-footer with elite three-point shooting accuracy, his mere presence on the perimeter dragged opposing shot blockers and rim protectors completely out of the paint. This unprecedented floor spacing granted Brunson wide-open driving lanes to exploit. When defenses collapsed inside to stop Brunson's drives, he seamlessly kicked the ball out to Towns, who punished opponents from deep. On the glass, Towns anchored the interior by securing vital defensive rebounds and generating high-frequency second-chance points. By combining Brunson's relentless clutch scoring with Towns' multi-dimensional spatial gravity, the duo neutralized the league's top-ranked defensive schemes. They elevated their synergy exactly when the stakes were highest, providing the elite star power required to break the franchise's 53-year title drought. The defense became their signature. OG Anunoby, McCall Bridges, Josh Hart, and Mitchell Robinson formed a defensive matrix that overwhelmed opponents through incredible synergy. This four-man perimeter and interior unit functioned like an elite, highly coordinated switching network, completely suffocating the league's most explosive offenses. At the point of attack, head coach Mike Brown utilized the terrifying length and physical traits of OG Anunoby and McCall Bridges to systematically erase passing lanes and disrupt isolation sets. Their unique combination of lateral quickness and high anticipation allowed the team to aggressively contest perimeter shots and effortlessly switch across positions without giving up clean driving angles. Complementing this wing length was the relentless motor of Josh Hart. Hart functioned as a high-volume rebounder from the guard position, constantly outworking opposing frontcourts to secure critical defensive possessions and instantly launch fast-break scoring opportunities. Behind this perimeter pressure stood the absolute interior anchor of the system, Mitchell Robinson. Acting as the ultimate safety net, Robinson used his size to protect the rim, alter shots, and take away second-chance scoring looks. This elite backline security granted the wings the freedom to play higher up on their targets and gamble on deflections without fear of exposing the paint. By combining physical force, relentless communication, and tactical discipline, this precise defensive blueprint allowed the team to grind down higher-seeded opponents throughout the postseason and comfortably secure the franchise's historic championship. In the playoffs, the Knicks faced adversity, trailing the Hawks 2-1. But they roared back, highlighted by a historic 67-13 first-half run that redefined dominance. The opening round series against Atlanta served as the ultimate wake-up call for the championship favorites, pushing head coach Mike Brown's squad into an immediate tactical corner. Game 2. Looking to protect home court at Madison Square Garden after a grueling series opener, the Knicks instead found themselves suffocated by Atlanta's perimeter shooting and aggressive pick-and-roll execution. Despite Jalen Brunson's relentless scoring inside, New York's defensive rotations collapsed in the fourth quarter. The Hawks capitalized on secondary break opportunities, silencing the Garden crowd to secure a stunning road victory and tying the series 1-1. Game 3. The series shifted to Atlanta, where the hostile crowd completely energized the Hawks. New York struggled heavily to adjust to the physical interior play, as Karl-Anthony Towns faced early foul trouble trying to check Atlanta's athletic frontcourt. With the offense turning the ball over and failing to establish any perimeter rhythm, the Hawks cruised to a dominant victory, taking a commanding 2-1 series lead and igniting national media panic over the Knicks' title aspirations. Facing an absolute must-win scenario, Mike Brown engineered the definitive strategic pivot of the postseason. He shifted the offense to operate directly through a dual big lineup, inserting Mitchell Robinson alongside Towns to completely monopolize the glass. The masterclass culminated in the historic Game 6 blowout. With their defensive matrix operating at absolute peak efficiency, the Knicks completely suffocated Atlanta's point-of-attack actions. This unrelenting pressure fueled an unprecedented, jaw-dropping 67-13 first-half run, obliterating the NBA playoff record for a first-half lead. McCall Bridges locked down the perimeter, while Brunson orchestrated the floor with surgical precision. This spectacular response didn't just break the Hawks' spirit to close out the series. It forged the mental armor and tactical blueprint that propelled the Knicks all the way to the championship. The team then swept both the 76ers and the Cavaliers. Mitchell Robinson's defensive clinic against Joel Embiid and a thrilling 22-point comeback against Cleveland paved the way to the finals. Following their grueling first-round awakening, the Knicks transformed into an absolute buzzsaw, executing back-to-back sweeps to secure the Eastern Conference crown. The Eastern Conference semifinals, New York, completely dismantled their bitter rivals, the Philadelphia 76ers, in a dominant 4-0 sweep. The absolute X-factor of the series was center Mitchell Robinson. Tasked with slowing down former MVP Joel Embiid, Robinson put on a masterclass in physical, disciplined post defense. He routinely denied Embiid his favorite baseline spots, forced him into high turnover situations, and completely controlled the defensive glass. Robinson's relentless, grueling interior containment wore the superstar big man down physically, causing Philadelphia's half-court offense to entirely collapse by the second half of games. The Eastern Conference Finals. Facing the top-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers, the Knicks extended their historic playoff winning streak with another convincing 4-0 sweep. Cleveland's elite defensive system initially caught New York off guard early in the series, capitalizing on hot perimeter shooting to build a monstrous 22-point lead. Rather than panicking, head coach Mike Brown adjusted on the fly, deploying a hyper-aggressive full-court press that rattled Cleveland's backcourt. This sparked a furious second-half avalanche led by Eastern Conference Finals MVP Jalen Brunson. The Knicks sliced through the deficit, outscoring the Cavaliers in the fourth quarter to complete a thrilling comeback victory. By routing Cleveland 130-93 in Game 4 to finalize the sweep, New York clinched the Bob Cousy Trophy in style, punching their ticket to the NBA Finals for the first time in 27 years. The finals against the Spurs brought the greatest comeback in NBA history. Down 29 points in the third quarter, the Knicks refused to quit. Heading into the ultimate showdown, the global basketball mainstream completely counted out the New York Knicks. The primary source of this skepticism was the terrifying, unprecedented dominance of San Antonio's 7'4" generational superstar, Victor Wembanyama. Analysts universally predicted that Wembanyama's historic 8-foot wingspan and elite rim protection would completely neutralize Jalen Brunson's mid-range game and render the Knicks' interior offense entirely obsolete. The media narrative insisted that New York's roster simply lacked the sheer height and physical geometry required to contain a player who could effortlessly alter shots at the rim while stepping out to hit deep perimeter three-pointers. These dark predictions seemed to fully manifest during a catastrophic stretch in the NBA Finals. With the Spurs firing on all cylinders, Wembanyama anchored a suffocating defensive sequence that forced consecutive turnovers, transforming a tight contest into a complete blowout. By the middle of the third quarter, San Antonio had built a monstrous, seemingly insurmountable 29-point lead. Statistically, no team in NBA Finals history had ever erased a deficit of that magnitude, and casual viewers began turning off their televisions, assuming the series was effectively over. But the Knicks refused to quit. Spurred on by a roaring Madison Square Garden crowd, head coach Mike Brown initiated a radical tactical adjustment. He deployed Karl-Anthony Towns to drag Wembanyama away from the hoop, while the defensive matrix of OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges went into an absolute full-court lockdown. New York forced rapid-fire turnovers, transforming defensive stops into immediate transition points. Piece by piece, the Knicks chipped away at the historic deficit, culminating in a dramatic, heart-stopping final possession to secure the single greatest comeback victory the sport had ever seen, permanently shattering the narrative of Wembanyama's invincibility. The miracle at the Garden became legendary. Overcoming that massive deficit showcased the team's grit, tactical flexibility, and their, quote, defensive matrix in full effect. Heading into this high-stakes matchup, national analysts completely counted out the Knicks, confidently declaring that the sheer physical geometry of San Antonio's 7'4" generational titan, Victor Wembanyama, would completely break New York's system. The media consensus insisted that Wembanyama's terrifying 8-foot wingspan would utterly paralyze Jalen Brunson's mid-range isolation game and turn Madison Square Garden into an interior graveyard for New York slashers. These grim predictions felt like absolute reality when Wembanyama anchored a spectacular third-quarter blitz, pushing the Spurs to a monstrous, seemingly insurmountable 29-point lead. With the championship hanging by a thread, head coach Mike Brown unleashed the full, suffocating power of the Knicks' defensive matrix. Abandoning traditional coverages, Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart initiated an aggressive full-court trap, violently disrupting San Antonio's point-of-attack actions. By forcing high-frequency deflections and chaotic turnovers, they flipped defensive stops into an immediate, fast-paced transition avalanche. Karl-Anthony Towns brilliantly executed his tactical role, dragging Wembanyama completely out of the paint to open up desperate, hard-fought driving lanes. Piece by piece, the Knicks chipped away at the historic margin, setting up a heart-stopping, legendary finale. In the final, breathless seconds of the game, with the Garden crowd reaching a literal fever pitch, the Knicks trailed by a single point. Brunson drove hard, launching a contested high-arching floater that bounced agonizingly off the back iron. Out of nowhere, OG Anunoby soared through the air, completely out-muscling the Spurs' front line to execute a spectacular, gravity-defying tip-in right at the buzzer. The ball dropped through the net as the final horn sounded, securing a miraculous 107-106 victory. This single breathtaking play capped off the largest comeback in NBA Finals history, permanently shattering the narrative of Wembanyama's invincibility and cementing this roster into sports immortality. Mike Breen's iconic call, "This is not a dream," captured the disbelief of every Knicks fan. It was a moment of pure magic that sealed a championship-altering win. The unbelievable sequence unfolded during the closing seconds of Game 4, transforming Madison Square Garden into an absolute cauldron of noise. Down by 1 point after clawing their way back from a massive 29-point deficit, the Knicks had one final chance to protect home court. Jalen Brunson drove aggressively down the lane, drawing the entire San Antonio frontline toward him. He unleashed a high-arching floater over the outstretched arms of Victor Wembanyama, but the ball bounced agonizingly off the front rim. As the buzzer prepared to sound, OG Anunoby materialized out of nowhere. Displaying incredible anticipation, he outmuscled the Spurs' defense and soared into the air to execute a spectacular, gravity-defying tip-in right at the horn. The ball found the bottom of the net just as the red light illuminated the backboard, securing a miraculous 107-106 victory. The stadium erupted into absolute pandemonium, and the legendary play-by-play announcer delivered the emotional exclamation point to the wildest comeback in finals history. This unforgettable buzzer beater completely broke San Antonio's spirit, giving the Knicks a commanding 3-1 lead and setting the stage for the definitive title coronation in Game 5. The finals were a clash of titans, with Brunson's MVP performance leading the way against the imposing Victor Wembanyama. The Knicks ultimately prevailed 4-1. This championship series pitted the veteran composure of New York against San Antonio's generational length. Mainstream media heavily doubted the Knicks, questioning how their interior offense could survive Wembanyama's terrifying elite shot blocking. However, head coach Mike Brown implemented an aggressive defensive matrix that consistently disrupted the young Titans' crunch-time execution. The defining story of the series was New York's historic resiliency. The battle-tested squad trailed by double digits in all 4 of their victories, refusing to break under intense physical pressure. After a jaw-dropping 29-point second-half comeback in Game 4, the Knicks carried their momentum back to Texas to close out the series in Game 5. Faced with an early 16-point deficit while Karl-Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby battled foul trouble, Jalen Brunson put the franchise on his back. He unleashed a legendary unanimous Finals MVP performance with a 45-point masterclass, scoring 13 straight points in the fourth quarter to hold off a late surge led by rookie Dylan Harper. Brunson averaged a series-best 32.6 points per game, cementing his legacy alongside the greatest legends in Madison Square Garden history. By executing a clinical 94-90 road victory in the finale, the comeback Knicks officially ended the city's agonizing 53-year title drought. The final seconds were nail-biters, but Mitchell Robinson secured the definitive rebound to clinch the championship. The long wait for New York was finally over. The closing minute of Game 5 devolved into pure, unadulterated sports theater. Clinging desperately to a fragile 2-point lead in a hostile Frost Bank Center, the Knicks' defense had to withstand one final, terrifying onslaught from the San Antonio Spurs. The home crowd reached a deafening crescendo as Stephon Castle drove aggressively down the lane, drawing a crowd of defenders before kicking the ball out to the perimeter. The ball swung rapidly to Victor Wembanyama, who utilized his massive frame to launch a potential game-winning three-pointer from the top of the key. Every heart in New York skipped a beat as the high-arching shot sailed through the air, clanging hard off the back iron. As the ball soared high into the air, a chaotic scramble erupted beneath the rim. With Wembanyama and the rest of the Spurs frontcourt crashing the glass with absolute desperation, it was Mitchell Robinson who rose above the baseline wreckage. Displaying incredible anticipation, Robinson used his size to box out his assignment, leaping high into the air to pull down the definitive, championship-clinching rebound with both hands. He was instantly fouled, calmly stepping to the free-throw line to sink the game-icing shots that put the contest completely out of reach. As the final horn sounded, cementing the thrilling 94-90 victory, over 5 decades of generational basketball heartbreak instantly evaporated. Players collapsed onto the floor in tears of pure exhaustion and joy, while back home, the packed streets of Manhattan and the iconic watch parties at Madison Square Garden erupted into absolute pandemonium. The legendary 53-year spiritual drought was officially broken. This battle-tested roster had done the impossible, cementing their names alongside the immortal legends of 1970 and 1973, and ensuring that the Larry O'Brien Trophy was finally returning to its rightful home in New York City. This modern team mirrored the 70s legends, combining unselfish play with new-age spatial awareness. The Ancestors and the Avengers shared a core of pure tenacity. Across the franchise's historic timeline, the championship teams of 1970, 1973, and 2026 are linked by a shared blueprint. Each squad was anchored by a fearless floor general, a physical interior anchor, and an uncompromising commitment to team-first defense. However, each roster adapted these core values to dominate the specific tactical landscape of their respective eras. The legendary 1970 champions, coached by Red Holtzman, established the definition of New York toughness. Operating without a three-point line, their system relied on stifling, physical interior play, and mid-range precision. This squad was famously epitomized by Willis Reed's heroic, injury-defying Game 7 entrance to inspire a championship over the Lakers, while Walt Clyde Frazier ran the floor with absolute surgical control. By 1973, the championship formula evolved from sheer physical force into elite roster depth and veteran synergy. While retaining their signature defensive identity, the 1973 squad integrated Hall of Fame passing and cutting. This team elevated ball movement to an art form, overwhelming opponents with a highly balanced attack, where every player on the floor was a passing and scoring threat. The 2026 championship team took these historic principles and supercharged them for the modern high-velocity NBA. While the 70s teams fought in a congested paint, the 2026 squad revolutionized the court's geometry. Karl-Anthony Towns served as a modern, floor-spacing big man, dragging shot blockers to the perimeter to open up massive driving lanes for Jalen Brunson. Yet the defensive spirit remained unchanged. The 2026 defensive matrix of Bridges, Hart, and Anunoby mirrored the relentless perimeter pressure once applied by Frazier and Dick Barnett. Furthermore, Brunson's historic postseason clutch scoring perfectly echoed Frazier's legendary 36-point 19-assist masterpiece from the 1970 finals. By blending the unyielding physical grit of the 1970 ancestors and the elite depth of the 1973 squad with cutting-edge perimeter precision, the 2026 Knicks built the ultimate basketball machine, bridging generations of fans and cementing their place among New York's immortal legends. Looking ahead, the team faces challenges with payroll and player workloads. Yet, as Jalen Brunson said at the parade, they have proven the doubters wrong. Sustaining this championship formula to build a true back-to-back dynasty requires overcoming intense financial and physical hurdles. Because management heavily committed over $251 million to lock down this elite core, the front office is entirely bound by the restrictive second apron of the NBA salary cap. This leaves the team with zero financial flexibility. They cannot utilize standard mid-level exceptions to sign free agents, meaning internal player development and savvy veteran minimum contracts are the only ways to build out the roster. Simultaneously, head coach Mike Brown must carefully manage player workloads. The grueling path to the 2026 title exposed critical depth vulnerabilities, forcing the starting lineup to absorb high-volume minutes that triggered dangerous mid-season slumps. To prevent future fatigue and wear and tear injuries, the Knicks must cultivate a reliable bench rotation that can execute their signature, high-intensity defensive matrix without burning out the superstars before the postseason. Despite these looming structural obstacles, the organization's culture is anchored by an unshakable belief. Taking the microphone at the massive championship parade through the Canyon of Heroes in Manhattan, Jalen Brunson perfectly captured the spirit of the franchise, declaring to a roaring crowd of millions that they had permanently shattered every cynical narrative and proven the doubters wrong. With Brunson's relentless leadership guiding the locker room and the defensive core locked in, this battle-tested squad possesses the exact youth, tenacity, and championship blueprint required to conquer the league's upcoming adjustments and secure their place in basketball immortality. From the 70s echoes to their 2026 glory, the Gotham Guardians have cemented their place in history. A new championship dynasty has truly arrived. The deep bond between New York City and its championship Knicks rosters transcends standard sports fandom. It is an authentic reflection of the city's blue-collar soul. To true New Yorkers, the title teams of 1970, 1973, and 2026 represent the absolute pinnacle of basketball because they won using the grit, resilience, and unselfishness that define the five boroughs. The obsession began with the 1970 and 1973 legends, coached by Red Holtzman. New York fell in love with those squads because they pioneered a relentless, team-first ethos epitomized by the phrase, "Look for the open man." Walt Clyde Frazier brought the ultimate combination of street-smart defensive theft and effortless Madison Avenue style, while Willis Reed's legendary, injury-defying walk out of the tunnel in 1970 became the eternal symbol of New York toughness. That era proved to the world that New Yorkers would always rally around athletes who valued collective sacrifice over individual glory. For 53 agonizing years, that specific identity became a distant folklore passed down through generations of starving fans. That is precisely why the city has fallen so deeply in love with this modern 2026 team. Led by Jalen Brunson, a fearless, undersized floor general who embodies the precise underdog, hard-working mentality of a true New Yorker. This squad mirrored the DNA of their ancestors. Fans embraced the 2026 team because they didn't just slide to a title, they bled for it. They survived a brutal mid-season injury crisis, outgrinded physical rivals in the Eastern Conference, and executed a mind-boggling 29-point comeback in the finals against the towering Victor Wembanyama. The three-headed Cerberus defense of Bridges, Hart, and Anunoby brought back the exact full-court, diving-for-loose-balls physical identity that older fans hadn't seen since the 1970s. This roster didn't just end a generation-defining drought. They unified families across the city, validated decades of loyalty, and permanently etched themselves into the immortal cultural fabric of Gotham. If you liked this video and would like more content like this, please like, comment, and hype this and other Queen Liz videos. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free for you, and Queen Liz would be ever so grateful.